Greg, thank you for joining me today on Pop Culture Unplugged.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Exciting times. First of all, I know you have a new movie that recently came out, but you're part of Afraid. But I was doing more research on you, man. You've been busy the last year and a half. A whole bunch of projects you're a part
Well,
of.
it seems that way because I did two movies in the same year, and it took about like 2.5 years for both of them to kind of come out, and they came out within 3 months of each other, I think. Um, but that was a great year for sure.
Mm.
Especially working with Chris again because I had done Operation Finale with him, and it's always a joy to do that with him.
Even Civil War, I enjoyed that movie. How'd you feel about that movie?
That was honestly probably uh, the best experience as an actor, um, working with a director who's a real auteur like that. I am just somebody who has command of everything and knows probably every um, department just as well or better than the department heads. And seeing that kind of brilliance was an amazing experience.
So yeah, we'll jump into Afraid now, in a few minutes, everything. But I want to know like the acting bug. How did it get you? What made you decide that this is what you wanted to go after?
So it was when I was really young, and I lived in a place called Moreno Valley in Southern California. And I think my mom had these VHS tapes. There were few movies on the waterfront and East of Eden and Streetcar Named Desire. And so, especially with James Dean as a young kid, I really identified with him. Um, and I just remember watching, for some reason, in East of Eden in the beginning when he gets on that train and he takes his sleeves out and puts his arms inside to keep warm. There was I can't really articulate what exactly it was, but I knew what that feeling was, and I thought when I was watching, I could do that. I feel like I'd belong there. And then as I got older, not really feeling like I fit in with people, and I was kind of it's hard for me to understand where my place was in this world. Just pretending to be somebody else seemed like it made the most sense as a gateway into understanding this human experience. Um, and from there, I just started watching movies a lot and studying actors and becoming obsessed with storytelling. So it's been a kind of journey from the time I was, I don't know, 8 years old, something. I thought I would probably be a director because we everybody in like the 90s had those camcorders, and my parents
Right.
had one. And I would always make these movies with my friends and tell them, okay, now you're going to say this to this person and you're going to do this. And uh, I thought I would end up that way, but the acting kind of took over.
Amazing. You mentioned studying certain actors. Was there a specific actor? Like, who did you try to study the most?
Yeah. So I think there were like stages to it. Initially, it was James Dean and Brando. And then I discovered Montgomery Clift, and that kind of blew me away. In some ways, like he's on the Mount Rushmore for me. And then later, I discovered Frederick March in the movie Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I had never seen anything like that. And I think he was doing things in the 30s that still no one to this day is capable of doing, and invented the method or whatever you want to call what he was doing in a time where everything was so new because they were coming out of silent pictures. But he was doing this thing. I mean, there's so many, but on the Mount Rushmore, that would be him. And then, of course, Pacino, De Niro, Mickey Rourke. There's so many, but I gotta narrow it down to those guys.
Now you've done a little bit of everything. You've done like we got a thriller like with Afraid and Civil War. Like, is there a certain role that you kind of like you're aiming to get someday that it's on your bucket list?
It's all about the writing. So I remember watching the Scorsese film, and there was just this guy pushing a broom. but you knew the character and you wanted to go home with
Mhm.
him and see his family life. And so to me, it's not the size of the role or anything like that. It's what is the writing, and in the writing, it could either, I think, destroy a movie or lift it up so immensely that as an actor, you just have the ability to work with great material that makes you better. So anything that's written really well with a desire to tell a story that compels people and can connect with people, that's what I aim to do. And play true to life characters where there's a lot of times in movies when you watch them, you go, people don't talk like that, or that guy wouldn't do that, or that doesn't make sense. But when you see a great performance with like Patty Chayefsky or somebody, a great writer, you go, my God, how did they do that? And it's so true to reality. So those are the kind of stories that I want to help to tell.
As an actor, how excited do you get like when you book a role and then the script comes in and you start reading and reading? Do you like read it all at once? Like how do you prepare for like roles?
So if I get a role, there's initially this flood of kind of almost euphoria where I'm that it's one of the happiest moments of my life. But then the next day it's followed by kind of dread because I go, okay, well, the person who came up with this story and is going to spend and has already spent probably years conceiving of it and writing it, and now they're going to make the film. I don't want to let them down. And so I think that's where you get this kind of immense pressure to make sure that you just don't, that you're being useful and you don't screw it up. And, but I read the script a few times, and then primarily I'll take my scenes and I'll study them, you know, morning to night, just study them nonstop, and then it becomes about the character. Sometimes it's harder to find a way in because it's almost like the person's diametrically opposed to you, but other times you go, okay, well, I really understand this guy, and
Mhm.
it's easier. But I think for myself, the hardest thing character to play is somebody who's just very normal because that's very complicated, actually. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Let's jump into the world of afraid now, AI and everything. What's first of all, what's your thoughts with the way we are these days with AI? It's all over the place.
Um, I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm not a fan. I think with everything, you know, when we thought that it would be, when we thought it would make us more empowered to have the hive mind in our pocket and to be able to look up anything we wanted at any given moment and also listen to any song we wanted or album we wanted.
Mm.
Um, I think the majority of people ended up becoming lazy and going, you know, hey, Alexa, play some music for me. And then they just go off playlists and stuff. And I think that, especially for writers, when you talk about the world of blogging and search engine optimization and things like this, a lot of people are getting fired and laid off, not only in that field, but so many other fields because now they could just say, hey, write me an article or write me a story about this, whatever you want to do, and it'll do it. And then instead of an actual artist or somebody who's studied for years to kind of hone their craft, now somebody just goes in and edits it to make it sound like a human. So every time you get a facsimile of a facsimile, I believe that it becomes further away from what the human touch actually is. And I don't think it's going to, and this might not be a popular opinion, but I don't think any of that or the robots, as they say, I don't think it's ever going to really take over. I think there's probably going to be a revolution sometime in my lifetime where the artist and the free thinker kind of take things into their own hands and we can really feel what the human touch is again.
Mm. You mentioned everything about you mentioned like the whole thing about like Alexa playing music or whatever, like what's your thoughts on like on the streaming platforms these days?
I mean, I use it. I use them because, record stores are pretty much non-existent. You can go on Apple and buy MP3s. Of course, MP3s are not the best way to listen to music. I do listen to records, and I could purchase records and listen to those. But it's just convenience. I mean, I think the whole theme of this movie too is about how much we're giving away for the sake of convenience, because that's the biggest business there is the business of convenience, selling people things that'll make their life easier.
Right.
But in actuality, I think what happens is um, it it makes things more dull, and you learn less and you experience less authenticity.
Speaking of the film, Henry, how did you connect with this character now? Like, and what kind of research did you put into this character?
So, in the first draft of the script that I read, it was very different than how it ended up becoming with the character Henry. At first, it was almost kind of like there was a QAnon kind of tinge to it, where it seemed like this guy was rogue and believed all these conspiracy theories, and I don't think it was really fleshed out how he ended up inevitably being. So there was watching a lot of going down the rabbit hole on a lot of YouTube, these guys that have these crazy conspiracy theories, and a lot of people, I even know people who swear by these things more than
Mm.
facts and what can be proven. Researching that, and then when the next draft of the script came, there was this element to me having a daughter and her being abducted, and me being misled by Aya about what's going on with all that. So then it became a shift of, okay, this guy is trying to do whatever he can to get his daughter back, and that became my focus. And with the kind of character arc that he goes through, uh, trying to convey. I mean, that's the one thing I think everybody could relate to, that you would, if you have a child, you'll do whatever you can to
Right.
get them back, the thing you love the most.
What was your experience working with John Cho in the film also?
It was great because he's really present, and he's there with you in the scenes, and he has a very good work ethic. Sometimes it's distracting when you're on set because um, everybody has a different way of working, but he seems to be able to uh, be adaptable to whoever he's working with, and make everybody feel very calm and comfortable, and uh, okay with being vulnerable in those moments. Very professional actor.
And what's great about like Blumhouse too, it's like they have like these with it people get addicted to the movies that they push out between the horrors and the thrillers and everything. Like how different now was this project compared to others you've worked on?
Um, well, it was different, and what I could say is the I did a film with Chris Weitz, the writer and director of Afraid, and it was a completely different experience. It was a period piece about the Mossad going to Argentina to capture Adolf Eichmann, and um, it was an MGM film. So MGM at that time, it seemed like they kind of followed suit with the traditional way of making movies, where um, they've been around forever. But I think Blumhouse has a definite thing they do in a brand where they've got so many fans that, just based on the name, if you say this is a Blumhouse film, a lot of people are going to go and see it. But the
Mm.
sets, everybody was still professional, and like I said, it's all about the character. And for me, when I'm doing my job, I don't really see anything really different except for what's this guy going through, and how can I try to make sure that I do the best job I can for the visionary of this whole thing.
Did he give you any pointers or anything or any advice for this film while you're working with him?
Well, a lot of time when I'm working with a director, if I have access to them, I'll text them and I'll ask them questions or say, hey, I have this idea, or I took gun training, even though it technically I have an AR in the movie, but I took gun training just so I could be able to handle a gun and know exactly,
Yeah.
um, just as help as part of the overall makeup of the character. Um, there was one thing that I suggested to the um, to one of the wardrobe department, I think it was, or the props department. I asked them what they thought about, in the beginning when my wife and I, played by Ricky Lindholm, we have our wedding ring. It's like a gold band, which nobody I think even notices in the movie. I say, what if when the next time you see us, we have those more kind of those bands that are I forget what they're called, but they're like black, and they're not, because a lot of people are worried about breaking their fingers and their rings, and they're more like kind
Yeah.
of military tactical rings. So then they're like, yeah, that's great. So we did that. So little things that I could kind of see if I can contribute to make it uh, as truthful to my understanding of it as I can. And working with Chris the second time was like a shorthand we had, because we got to know each other really well. And he actually is kind of responsible for whatever career I have, because he saw a movie I was in, I think it was in 2011, and he tweeted about it. And then we met him, and then the rest is history.
So now what's next for you now? Any other projects you're allowed to tell us about or you're about to go work on?
There's this movie. It's an independent film. It's in the very beginning stages.
Okay.
And I don't know too much about it. There was a first draft that I read, but I'm just starting to prepare for it now. So it's really in the very early stages of development. But it was a guy that I came across, I crossed paths with years ago, and I was supposed to do a short film with him, and it didn't work out. He ended up making the short film, and then he reached out to me, and I saw the short film, and I was completely blown away by it. So now we're trying to, I think we're going to shoot that in October or November, something like that.
So now for Afraid, any idea when we're gonna see it on streaming?
I actually don't know. I looked on, it used to be Voodoo, but now it's like Fandango at home. And I looked for it, and I didn't see it, even in like, that it's coming out soon. But I know that Civil War, I think tomorrow, goes to Max.
Yeah, I did see that actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds right. Greg, lastly, now how can the listeners and the viewers find you on social media, keep up with you? Because I know I've noticed you've been posting a few things here and there lately.
Yeah. Yeah. It's for Instagram is what I primarily use, and it's just at Greg John Hill, and the Greg has one G, and then the John has one N at the end. So Greg John Hill. And Facebook I have, it's just Gregory Hill, but I don't really use any of the other ones. I just got on Threads, and I can't even figure out how to work that thing. It's weird.
And I did read the other day that you don't like to make long posts either.
Well, no, I had to make one just because, it's just been a real privilege to be able to do this stuff. And I just, social media,
Yeah,
it serves its purpose for what it is.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Greg, I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes today. Good luck with everything, and hopefully we'll see you in more things, and you'll come back on and we'll talk about it.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you.